All right, you always hear that as we wait for the White House briefing, including comments by Mick Mulvaney, the budget director, that we can get 3% growth. The Treasury Secretary has hinted at that. Now, that seems paltry, as I say, but it would be 50% stronger growth than we're experiencing now. So it doesn't seem like a Herculean leap to get to that level, but it is a Herculean leap to get to that level. Market watcher Scott Shellady, but so much really, if you think about it, Scott, goes to this growth concept, right? That you get that growth. It could pay for a lot of things. Do you buy that?
Yeah, I mean, and the way we've started off his presidency, we've got great consumer confidence. A lot of folks believe in him. But at the end of the day, if you put your hand over your eyes and take out that one good jobs number, these numbers are very Obama-esque. So we got to get going. He's got to get on his horse. The first quarter GDP ruling was paltry. We haven't really shown any other real good signs of life. We got to get going.
You know, you're right. I mean, that was a 0.7% growth, even less than thought. Now, again, smart guys like you remind me of the fact that the first quarter can be dicey anyway. But I'm thinking that the Federal Reserve is out of the stimulus business, right? I mean, so it's up to, I guess, Washington in terms of fiscal policy to change that. Tax cuts are the only game, presumably, in town here. Some worry about the deficits getting worse when you do that. What do you think?
Well, I think it's not going to be revenue neutral, and I think that right now between $2.5 trillion and $9.5 trillion is what we're looking at as far as what his tax cuts could bring in deficit. But it's going to have to be a tax cut. That's really what it's going to have to be. We've exhausted monetary policy. I think other central banks around the world have shown that what we've done doesn't work either. We haven't had the growth. We're starting to see wages pick up a little bit, but it needs to be a tax cut, and we need to do it now. That's going to be really the one thing that's going to maybe rescue us and give us a chance at 3%.
What do you make of the fact that the bond market has held up pretty well? Rates have been a constant, if not lower, even as stocks have been soaring. It's an anomaly, to put it mildly, but that it's the best of all worlds. How long does that last?
Well, I think right now the bond market's the truth serum. These lower, the rates are not really, or these rate hikes haven't come down to the high street banks or main street banks. Nobody's really getting in interest, so they're still being forced to the bond market. So the bond market's show me what you got lately, and we value equities on a totally different scale, so it's much more touchy-feely, but the truth serum is the bond market.
And if that truth serum is right, then the bond market doesn't anticipate much stimulus coming.
No, I don't think so, and I don't think we're going to see a ton of growth coming. I'd love to see a huge tax break make the difference here, but it's got to get done, and it's got to get done quicker than I think a lot of people think.
Are you nervous seeing the Republicans stumble? Some have added of late the budget deal that did show a lot of bipartisanship, which used to be the stuff the media would commend both parties, but now it's being interpreted as the Republicans caving and then getting had. Leaving that aside, though, that it doesn't augur well either for a health care rework or, for that matter, tax cuts, that Democrats are smelling blood and they're convinced that they're going to win on that as well. What do you think?
I think they're being led better. I mean, I'm not nervous. I'm angry. You know, we've got an opportunity, or the conservatives have an opportunity here that they're slowly but surely squandering because they want to stick their chest out and pound it because they've been in the dark ages for the last 8 years. So this is something that they can't falter at the first fence, and it looks like that's what they're doing. So they need to be led better. They need to get going, because right now I do think the Democrats are getting one over on them with, you know, with the power really still with the Republicans. So not nervous, just angry.
Are you angry if it turns out the tax cut, though it might be coming, it won't be as big, sweeping, comprehensive as billed? It might still be. I don't want to, you know, trivialize it here, but that it will have probably a 10-year sunset as part of the budget reconciliation process, but it will be smaller than thought.
Yeah, look, I don't want to be Debbie Downer here. We're not doing well. These numbers haven't turned around. This aircraft carrier is still going in the same direction. Take out that one good jobs number. So we need something sweeping, and we need something radical. And if we don't get that, we're going to continue to slip back into the numbers that we saw under Obama, and then we're going to be wondering with, you know, what now? And that's going to be the problem. We need something broad and sweeping, and we need it earlier rather than later.
All right, and no appetite, it seems, for even anything approaching spending restraint. Now, I'm not saying go crazy and address all entitlements at once, but nothing to curb the growth of government.
Well, and we need to do that, too. And I thought it was really interesting when Mnuchin was pressed on this about, hey, these tax cuts could really, you know, make the deficit balloon. He said, well, as a percentage of what we think GDP will be, it'll be a lot better than it is today. So he almost kind of gave up the fact that he thinks that that's going to balloon a little bit, but he thinks the GDP is going to be much greater, and he's kind of subscribing to Laffer on that.
Yeah, I hear you. You're talking about Art Laffer, the Svengali behind the last big
Yes.
comprehensive tax reform under Ronald Reagan. Let me get your take on how the markets would take all of the above. In other words, if it doesn't pan out as generous or as timely, that is the tax cuts, than has been anticipated or maybe baked into the market pie, then what?
Well, it's going to catch up to our GDP, and the last read, like you just mentioned, was not very good. I mean, Paul Tudor Jones, who's been an icon in the industry, has said the Fed should be, quote-unquote, terrified at valuations with the equity market as it is right now compared to our GDP. So we can't continue to sit around and talk about we're going to get a great economy. We have to really get a good economy now, and it's got to be from stimulus, and that's going to be tax cuts, because fiscal policy is going to have to be our next policy. Monetary policy, the Fed, we've proven that doesn't work. So we need this boost. We need it now, because we haven't seen any significant turnaround in any of these economic numbers since he's been in office. Yes, consumer confidence is a lot better, but we were expecting a lot, and we can't go downstairs and buy a beer with a high consumer confidence number.
How do you think the president is doing, all these back and forth notwithstanding?
I'll tell you this. I think, I was excited to see a new change and see a new administration, because I've been pretty frustrated the last 8 years. But I could never have envisioned even his own party stalling him and putting up their hands at every turn. The guy has just got really nobody pushing him forward. He's got the wind in his face the entire time, and I could not have envisioned how much that was going to be the case. So he just doesn't have anything at his back giving him a boost, and it's going to be a long, hard slog. And if that's the case, we're going to slip back to where we were the last 8 years. We're just not going to get anything done, and who wins from that?
Well, that would point to a serious correction or worse in the stock market in that event, right?
Well, I mean, like I said, I'm not Debbie Downer, but we need to see some of these numbers come in and boost these valuations. I mean, funny enough, we've got a 12.5% better than last year on these earnings. We were looking at maybe 9%, but most of that's coming from overseas earnings.
All right.
The conglomerates, the global conglomerates, are up 19%, but the guys at home are only up 9%.
Good
so
point.
slowly but surely, we're having to start to look at these numbers and start to say
right.
that this economy is not getting any better very fast. So with that 0.7 GDP last quarter, and anything coming around the corner anytime soon is not going to get us where we need to be.
All right. Scott Shellady, thank you very much. TJM Investments.